Hello, everyone. We are excited to have you with us here for this live webinar event. My name is Joshua Kroll, and I am the Director of Sales and Marketing with Evexia Diagnostics, and I will be your host for today's webinar. I want to welcome you all to our webinar regarding food sensitivity and the YorkTest. I am pleased to be joined by my colleague, Dr. Wayne Sedano, the Director of Clinical Support and Education with Evexia Diagnostics. Now, as many of you may know, Dr. Sedano is a chiropractic physician, a diplomat of the American Board of Chiropractic Internists, a diplomat of the American Clinical Board of Nutrition, a certified functional and integrative medicine practitioner, and is board certified in traditional naturopathy. Dr. Sedano is also the author of Integrative Medicine Approach to Thyroid Disorders and Integrative and Functional Medicine Approach to Basic and Advanced Laboratory Interpretation Clinician's Desk Reference. Now, Dr. Sedano frequently lectures worldwide on integrative and functional medicine topics and has been the Director of Clinical Support and Education for Evexia Diagnostics since 2017. Dr. Sedano provides one-on-one clinical support to clients of Evexia Diagnostics via Ask the Doctor, a free online platform, and is also available for telephone and video consults. Before we get started, I would ask that you please type any questions you may have into the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will do our best to address them at the end of the presentation. Now, without further ado, Dr. Wayne Sedano.
Hi, Joshua, and thank you very much. And hi, everyone. I'm very honored to be here tonight. So as you can read on the slide, okay, the presentation is about food sensitivity testing, but it's also about the condition of the gastrointestinal tracts, and you'll see the tie-in as we go through the slides. So let's get started. Oh, come on, there we go. Okay, so as you can see on the slide, Hippocrates observed well over 2,000 years ago that all disease begins in the gut. I would also add the brain, and that's due to the fact about the gut-brain connection, and I hope you're very familiar with that as well. If the brain is ill, the gut tends to go ill, and vice versa, and there's a whole bunch of connections with neurotransmitters, so I hope you're familiar with that. So, as the title of this slide reads, what is going on in a compromised gut? So that's what I'm going to talk about for a few moments. So if the gut is compromised in any way, and we're talking about conditions like SIBO, hypochlorhydria, which is low stomach acid, low pancreatic enzyme or pancreatic enzyme insufficiency is another one, leaky gut. We can talk about inflammatory bowel disease. If the gut is compromised in any way by those conditions or other conditions, what can happen is that large proteins, meaning from food, or other sources, they can pass into the bloodstream and can cause an immune reaction, right? And a lot of times these large food proteins in particular are a result of poor digestion. So when you look over on the right-hand part of the slide, you see the 5 R's that are good to go over. First of all, the first one is remove, as you see on top. So what are you removing? We already know that. We're removing the reactive foods following the blood test. You'll have some hard copy data, and I'll get more into that a little bit later. Repair, you may be familiar with L-glutamine, is a wonderful supplement to take for repairing the gut lining. There's been a lot of information on that, and also digestive enzymes. And I'll talk about that, how breaking down the proteins properly to amino acids, dipeptides, and tripeptides leads into this. And then reinoculate with probiotics. You see the fourth one down the line is rest. And what they're talking about is removing the allergenic or antigenic food for about 3 months, and I'll go over that again a little bit later. And then the next is about reintroducing foods one by one. Again, I'll be reviewing that. So I basically want you to be familiar with that as we go through this webinar with the food sensitivity and also about the gut as well. What testing is going to do, it's going to allow you to recognize those reactive foods and immediately remove them from the diet. So when you take this action, what happens is it takes the pressure off of the immune system. So what does that mean? It basically means that if you take the pressure off the immune system that is turned on and hyperreactive and everything, it's going to allow the body to shift into a repair mode to repair itself. You can think of it this way. If the immune system is constantly being called, to the challenge and all the energy is going towards the immune system, going, working either whether it's autoimmune or food sensitivities, things of that nature, or other conditions, repair goes down. So by taking pressure off the immune system, the body is allowed to give time to repair itself. That's kind of a neat thing. And you can immediately remove those reactive foods while you're addressing other conditions as well. So it's kind of a neat thing. I want to briefly mention food allergies as opposed to food sensitivities. Now, food allergy, it's a type 1 hypersensitivity reaction, and that's going to involve that immunoglobulin called immunoglobulin E, IgE. You're probably familiar with that. And what happens is IgE, it'll activate the mast cells, and they're going to cause a vascular and a smooth muscle response in genetically susceptible individuals. And I have a slide coming up that's going to show you the difference between IgE reaction and an IgG reaction, so hang in there for that. But like it says on the slide, allergic diseases are estimated to affect 10% to 25% of the population. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go through. So here's the big question. Why should food cause sensitivities? When I first learned about this 30 years ago, I'm thinking, why food? Why would it do that? So as it reads on the slide, immune sensitivity to most foods, it begins with a combination of the degradation of the intestinal mucosa, meaning the gut is just not happy here, and a decrease in digestion or indigestion. So let me explain that a little bit further. So first of all, as it reads on this title of the slide, immune hypersensitivity refers to misdirected immune reactions. So the immune system typically does not usually mistake food for an aggressive allergen for the reasons you see on the slide. First of all, cooking, it's going to denature the protein. In other words, it's going to separate it out. Right? It's going to kind of lay it out in a line, kind of like spaghetti. And then the enzymes can work on that. The proteolytic enzymes, they can cleave the proteins of the food into tripeptides, meaning 3 amino acids, dipeptides, 2 amino acids, and then amino acids. These are easily absorbed and generally non-antigenic, right? So if digestion is not right, I just want to stop there for a second, right? If the small intestine is seeing proteins that are larger than 3 amino acids, 4, 5, 6, and 7, right, it becomes an antigen because it's not potential antigen. It is not meant to be digested. So, and third and finally, on the final bullet, proteins and peptides that are going to escape degradation, right? Maybe you ate too much and there wasn't enough digestive enzymes normally to break down the food. Well, there's a backup system, and that is a healthy gut barrier, and that barrier has some digestive enzymes in it as well, but it also has an immunoglobulin in it called secretory IgA or fecal secretory IgA. You can see that on a lot of tests. I want you to understand, and hopefully that you do understand, that the gut lining contains an immune system unto itself, the Peyer's patches and so forth. It also contains what's known as M cells, if you're not familiar with that, and beta lymphocytes, and those are the ones that produce the B cells produce the immunoglobulins, in this case, secretory IgA. So the immune system is very active in the gut as well. So if everything's working right, you get a normal immune response. So what is a normal immune response? Right? What it is that you don't even know that it's working, right? You're not sick, you're not ill, the immune system's doing anything, you're not hypersensitive, you're not getting a lot of colds and flus. That's when you know that immune system is working properly, by the way, just from edification. Now, here's the slide. This is the response to the immediate reaction with the allergy and the IgG delayed food antigens. And by the way, hopefully you should be able to get a copy of these slides, by the way, and just keep them, at your desk if you want these for reference, because there's a lot of good information to come up. So when we're looking at reactions, you see on the left column, the reaction, and then you have the center is the IgE, the immediate or the allergic reaction, and then the delayed or the sensitivity IgG all the way to the right. Of course, IgE, that's that immediate reaction, could be within a few minutes or within a few hours, which usually is pretty darn quick. You get that anaphylaxis, the wheezing, the edema. If anybody is old enough to have seen Mrs. Doubtfire, you might know what I'm talking about. With IgG, usually there's no early signs. Usually it's late, a little bit later, maybe a day, 2 days later, as you can read by the typical symptoms: irritability, headache, abdominal pain, and some fatigue, and so forth. So that's what you're going to get with these. They're just kind of like a smoldering fire, and that's kind of the difference between the two. Again, one is an allergy, the other is a sensitivity. So now let's take a look very briefly here. I know this is a lot of information, but I just want to qualify the hypersensitivity reactions overall and also to food as well. The type of reactions, if you're not familiar, that the body has, the type of hypersensitivity is 1 through 4. You see type 1, that's the immediate, immunoglobulin E, the immediate, we talked about it. Then there's the type 2 called cytotoxic. What happens with that is in antibodies, they trigger what's known as complement. Complement comes from the liver. Now, these are little proteins that help complement the immune system, and they cause the cells to break or cell lysis, as you see there. That's IgE mediated. Next is type 3. Immune complexes can trigger tissue inflammation. You see that a lot with food. The IgG, it can react with the food and it forms these immune complexes, meaning the antigenic food or the food that somebody's reacting to with the immunoglobulin, it could bury itself in the tissue and then the immune system says, man, you don't belong there. And then it's say if it goes into the joints, then it can start eating the cartilage. That's an example of that. The fourth type is called type 4, of course, and it's cell mediated. What happens is that there's activation of T cells or T lymphocyte cells. They're called cytotoxic, and also the macrophages. They start doing damage to the tissue. An example of that, as you're seeing on the right, is gluten sensitivity. Celiac disease. It starts eating away the gut lining, the microvilla and the villi, and it can cause all kinds of problems with that. That cross-reactivity goes with something that is genetic. It's called a major histocompatibility complex. And that's a group of genes that codes for proteins on the surface of cells that helps the immune system recognize foreign substances. So if there is some kind of reactivity, like with gluten, it'll start going after the gluten and also the tissue associated with that as well, just for a little clarification. So I want to talk very quickly, give a quick note about food intolerances, because there is a difference between the allergy, now that you know, the IgE, then the IgG, the sensitivity, but also food intolerances. An example, as you see on this slide, perfect example, is lactose intolerance. So what happens is that there's reaction to food where the immune system is not involved. Now with lactose intolerance, what's the deal with that? Well, there's a decrease in the enzyme lactase where we can't break down the sugar mainly found in milk called lactose. I have a little theory about that, is that since lactose intolerance seems to be, relatively widespread, right? One of my old teachers told me that maybe we shouldn't be drinking milk or just have, milk from mom and then just like, in the animal kingdom and then be done with it. All this push to have milk genetically from a cow, by the way, which can cause other problems, may not be such a good idea. So I'll give you some food for thought. The reason why I'm mentioning food intolerances essentially is this. If you were to do an IgG test and you remove the foods and somebody is still reacting to something, you want to be aware of these intolerances, like lactose intolerance. Also, you want to be aware of, that doesn't get a whole lot of play, is histamine intolerance. So what's that, right? A histamine intolerance can develop when a person has abnormal levels of histamine, could be from food or other sources. Also, an abnormal level, usually low, of the enzyme you see on this slide, diamine oxidase, right? And damage to the gut lining can cause a decrease in diamine oxidase. Certain medications can also do that as well. And what will happen with these folks that have a histamine intolerance, again, it's not a sensitivity. They can complain of headaches and diarrhea and migraines, runny nose, and all kinds of things. But I want you to be aware of these things so you really have a handle, because there's could be a lot of crossover to sensitivities and intolerances, and now you got the two major ones under your belt. I've also provided this slide and the next slide with some foods that are high in histamine. So again, get a copy of these slides. I think it'll be helpful. Hopefully it will be. Certain fish that are high in histamine, and cheese and meats. Here are the vegetables, alcohol. I'm not going to go over them, and and other foods that you would be surprised are red wine vinegar, strawberries and pineapple and things of that nature. So I want you to have this, in your on your desk so you can understand part of the intolerances. So having said that, let's take a look at the York test, right? So as it says on the slide, these laboratories have been around for quite a while, 38 years, right? They are excel in, as it says, laboratory diagnostic testing, and are a leading provider of the food and drink specific IgG antibody testing, right? They've done a lot of clinical trials on sensitivity, and as you see on the bottom, and that can affect the mind and the body, meaning gut, brain, and other areas. So I think you understand that. What they do is they specialize in the IgG testing. Now there's IgG 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are called the subcategories of IgG. And if you're not familiar with it, you can go ahead and Google that, but you need to be familiar with the subcategories. But the bottom line here is they test for all 4 of these things, food sensitivities, so you get what they call as a food footprint or profiling. In other words, you get hard copy data. Is there a reaction to these foods and food sensitivities, so you can immediately remove those? Now, they use a technique called, it's got a long name to it, enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. So that's a good thing. And I'm going to explain that, very simply. It's kind of a neat way to check for antibodies, and I'll show you how they develop that and how they scored the testing. Also, the lab, it's important to note that the lab has what's known as a CE mark for allergy testing equipment. CE, it's a European mark that they use in Europe. It's called the European, I believe, the economic area, where essentially what that mark means is that it meets high quality, safety, health, environmental, and all the protection. So it's top notch. So I want you to definitely keep that in mind. So let's talk about, and you see on these 4 bullets, it starts out with Hart G. Now that's Dr. Hart. I met her, honored to meet her. She is part of the York team that does research and evidence-based for this test. So not only does she write these articles, you can see 2017, 2018, she's part of the team. So you got that in your corner as well. And you can look at some of these references if you want, and really get a handle on it. It's a wonderful lady, like I said as well. So here's a look at the common symptoms of food sensitivities. And I'm going to show you this on the next 2 slides. The big one, it certainly is digestive problems, like I had mentioned, but the ones that kind of may not, think about a whole lot, skin conditions, if you're not familiar with that, respiratory, just overall nausea, mental problems, meaning cognition, more or less, or foggy, brain fog, that kind of thing. Migraines, headaches, joint pain is also big, but also weight management, weight loss, and weight gain, mainly because with weight loss, or particularly with people have weight gain, they're in an inflammatory state, and this can create more inflammatory state, making it harder to lose weight. So this gives you a little better schematic of this. You can see the neurological symptoms. Dermatological, I'll tell you, I've been doing food sensitivity testing when I was heavy into treating patients a lot. I would always favor this and look anytime eczema, psoriasis, especially urticaria, meaning hives would show up. I'm IgG testing because I found it to be especially beneficial, because a lot of these are gut related and also liver needing detoxification. So it works really, really well. And you can see the other musculoskeletal, gastrointestinal, respiratory, and also psychological. This is even a longer list of symptoms. This is the last one that I want to show you. These are symptoms associated, again, with the IgG delayed hypersensitivity reactions, against systemic, digestive, lung, just a little bit more. So you have this in your arsenal. Essentially, when a patient walks in and they have a little checklist, these are my symptoms, you can use this as a reference guide and really get a good idea on what's going on, and maybe we should do this test as part of getting the individuals well. Now, this slide, comes from the lab, and as you can read on the top, this is the research, based on the research performed by the YorkTest. And these are the reasons individuals ask for a food-specific IgG guided elimination diet. A lot of folks know about these things, and this was their research at the YorkTest. And look at 78% digestive issues, please help. Those are the ones high on the list, as you can see, that we're looking for this fatigue, weight loss. But keep in mind, migraines, joint pain, skin conditions, all of that can be part of the reasons why you would want to do one of these tests. It can be very helpful. Again, take the antigenic load off the body, so the body has time to repair while you're repairing the gut. It can get into a repair mode, like I said earlier. This was a survey. This was over 5,000 individuals, as you can read. If you look on the bottom, it was done by, again, Dr. Hart on the bottom, and Dr. Hartman. This was done in 2007. This was a customer survey from York. It was conducted by the University of York, and this is in the UK, by the way. And basically what this is saying is those that eliminated the foods, how what did they feel? Who benefited the most? And you can see well over 60%, 64 on the bottom and 81 on top, psychological problems, GI problems. So there's a lot of benefit to adding this to treatment, aside from being able to tailor an initial diet for an individual that's having these kind of difficulties. So they also reported, this is back in 2007, that 3 out of 4 who changed their diet reported improvement, and about 68% noticed improvement within 3 weeks. That's pretty spectacular. Doing IgG testing, I've noticed that, within a couple of weeks, all of a sudden you're taking the antigenic load off, the body's in a repair. So a lot of this certainly makes sense. This study was done, this was the latest YorkTest independent survey, what they did in 2020. And as you can see here, they looked at they surveyed 565 participants. 82% of the participants reported a positive impact on their health by doing this test. So that is pretty solid, good information that it favors helping the individual, getting them on the right track. That's pretty outstanding. So I'm going to pause just a moment here and slow down, because I have a tendency to go fast. Everybody tells me that because I get excited, because I love talking about all of this stuff, functional integrative medicine. I want you to understand that this test is a little complicated, but I'm going to kind of water it down that's where I understand it, because I don't need to get into the heavy details of an enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. But I want you to understand how the test is run on a basic level. So what they do is, this is a serological test. In other words, looking at the patient's serum. All right, so very simplistically, there's the test tube you see over there, and in those test tubes, they put the different types of foods, which could be antigenic to the individual or reactive. In other words, the patient in the serum could have antibodies to that food. All right, so they have all these test tubes lined up. They put the antigen in there, or the food protein, whatever it is, and then they put the serum, a little bit of the serum in each one of these tubes, and they see if there is a reaction. In other words, if after they add the serum to the test tube, and if the patient's serum has the antibodies to that food, it's going to bind to the food, right? Step 2 is that, by the power of science here, they have what's known as a labeled antibody, right? Something that recognizes the human immunoglobulin G. They add that to the test tube, then they put it in this fancy machine, probably turbocharged, just kidding, right? And they're able to count if it's the reactive or the amount of immunoglobulins. And that's essentially a kind of a watered down ELISA immunosorbent test, but that's how I always learned it. And I'm kind of good with that, since, I don't need to know how the machine actually works, but it does work, and it's a certified machine. It's been around, it's used in all the labs, LabCorp requests and everything else. So just so you get kind of an idea. Here's a look at the test kit. What comes with it, and then you get the little packet. And let me go to the next slide, because it tells you what's actually in the kit. So if you look over on the right, so what's in your food intolerance test kit. Now I need to qualify something here. I learned by talking to the folks at York over in the UK, they tend to call food sensitivities food intolerance. So please keep that in mind. What they are doing is, here in US, is food sensitivity, but they kind of interchange that word. So I want you to keep that in mind. So please don't get confused with that. What's in the packet here is they give you 2 single lancets, so you can get blood out of one finger. If that doesn't work, you can use another one. They're single use. They give you this absorbent wand, give you a container. They give you one adhesive plaster, and for those in the US, that's a Band-Aid. And then they give you a cleansing wipe. So what I want to do, it's important to know how to take this sample. So on the next slide that I'm going to show you, there's a very short video. It's only a minute and like 38 seconds or something like that. And you can take a look at the collection procedure to make sure you do it right when you do this test. So you can kind of like one and done. So let me crank this thing up here.
When your YorkTest parcel arrives, it's imperative you follow the instructions carefully to ensure we can process your sample quickly and get your results back to you. First of all, check the information on the customer details form is correct and complete the blanks. Remember to sign the form. Print your name and write the date clearly on the side of the one container using the pen from the kit. Wash your hands thoroughly in warm water and dry them off. Cleanse the top of your finger with the antiseptic wipe. Twist and pull the cover from the lancet. Place the lancet against the top of your finger and press the yellow button firmly. With a sensation like a brief scratch, a sterile pin will puncture the skin. Massage your finger towards the pinprick to produce a large droplet of blood. If you have difficulty producing enough blood to fill the wand, try standing up, holding your hand below your waist. Similarly, try repeating the prick on another finger with the second lancet. Each lancet is single use and will not work again. Holding the wand by the plastic cover, dip the exposed tip into the blood and allow it to draw up. Slide the plastic cover along the wand and rotate in order to completely soak the wand. It's important the wand is fully saturated, as this contains the precise amount of blood required for testing. Place the wand into its container immediately after drawing the blood. Return the sample and both lancets to the kit box. Enclose both the signed customer details form and kit box in the white prepaid return envelope and post to YorkTest immediately.
Okay, so I wanted to make sure that you saw how you have to fill that wand up, you have to turn it over, make sure it has all the blood in it. That was the best way to do that rather than talking about it, so the visual was kind of the way to go. So, okay, so here is a look at the sample report, right? Again, over in the UK, they're talking food intolerance, and this is a food sensitivity test. You'll see that, and I have some close-ups on this, so hang on just for a moment, please. You see it looks like a stoplight to me. You got your red, yellow, and then the green. Red, obviously, high reactivity. The yellow is the borderline, and the green is the normal reactivity. So let me get a little bit closer. So another slide, so you can see a little bit clearer. There we go. So there you go. So essentially, right, the highly reactive that you see in the red, that is defined by the ELISA score. That's why I showed you the ELISA test, how much reactivity. They're talking about the reactive values, how much IgG is in there. They've determined that with this test, that a score between 20 and 200 is high reactivity. Those are the ones that you want to remove, and they're listed, you know, banana, apple in this case, and lotus root. I don't know who eats lotus root, but pineapple, wheat, things of that nature. I might have to try that. A borderline score is defined as between 12 and 19, and then a normal reactivity they have defined by their laboratory standards as 0 to 11. So that's how this is qualified. Again, they're using the ELISA, which is why I showed you that, and looking for what's known as the reactive values to how much IgG is in there, like I just talked about. So you can see that. Here's the bottom part of the page, just so you can see it. You can see some of the the non-reactive foods and so forth. So we can look at that. Now, so in summary, immune sensitivity to most foods begins with, like I said in the beginning, the potential for a combination of problems with the degradation of the intestinal mucosa. Probably something has kind of set that up. Also decreased digestion. Here's the thing that I really want to bring home there. Food is an ideal source for antigens, right? To trigger that enteric and that gut immune system, because it provides a whole bunch of antigens in food, particularly if someone's eating the same diet over and over and over again. And statistically, I had learned that the people generally eat the same 20 foods over and over again. So the body's seeing the same proteins, trying to break them down over and over again. This is where, if you heard of rotational diets or seasonal diets, can be extremely helpful as well. Bottom line is, if you have undigested food proteins, meaning that they are not broken down into tripeptides, dipeptides, or amino acids, it's food for dysbiosis, first of all, and it can stimulate that hyperactivity of the gut immune system, hyperactivity. So that's like the long and short of that. So, and food sensitivity and related diseases, it's worldwide, and I have a reason I'll show you on the next slide while I think it's reaching high proportions. Right, the prevalence of food sensitivities has increased over 50% in adults and children in the past couple of years. I got a reason for that coming up, which I think it is. Right, and the symptoms, we've already talked about that: rashes, headaches, chronic intestinal disease. Remember that delayed food sensitivities can occur hours or days after food ingestion. I strongly suggest getting a diet history for patients, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's so helpful. Also on that history, you want to get some, their beverage intake as well. But I found helpful to tack on bowel movements. Not only did you have them, but how were they? The loose stools, formed stools, things of that nature. because you can see how things can clear up with the food sensitivities or not if you need to go a little bit further with that. So this is why I think the potential for more problems with food sensitivities has arisen, and it's in the red here. Now, the food itself has been dramatically transformed. You all probably know that. There's new strains of grains, there's genetically modified food, processed food. The body's just not geared to handle this. You know, some of those grains have been resistant to pathogens and herbicides. There are some food, I won't mention any companies or anything, that the fruit or seeds from the potential seeds, they will not grow because they've been genetically modified, and I just don't think the body's used to seeing that. So we definitely need to be aware of that. There's also a lot of that nasty stuff being sprayed on foods that can cause some gastrointestinal problems. I've read some stories in glyphosate really giving a whole lot of reaction to that too, back and forth. But the main thing here is maintaining the wholesome and balanced diet. That's essential for ensuring that good gut microbiota, that proper gut-brain connection. And I think this is one of the reasons why we're seeing more and more food allergies with the genetically modified food, at least here in the U.S. So I have a couple of case studies, and the references are on the bottom. These are really great, some case studies. If you need some reference, I suggest downloading these articles. Put them on your desk when you're talking to patients, and I think they're very helpful. So we got three I want to review. The first one is obesity and food sensitivity, and this has to do with children. You don't often think of juveniles as, why do we need to do a food sensitivity on a juvenile? Well, you look at this study. This study was done by experimental clinical endocrinology and diabetes. So it's a peer-reviewed study. And what they did, they took a look at overweight or obese juveniles, and they found a couple of associations with food antibodies to IgG, right? Elevated C-reactive protein, inflammation. They also found what's known as intima media thickening. So what is that? The intima media is part of the artery. They found it to be reactive and start to thicken, thinking, are these children having cardiovascular problems early? The answer to that is most likely, and yes, because they documented that anti-food or total IgG showed a tight correlation between C-reactive protein, inflammation, because there's the immune system is responding, and also this thickening of this intima in the artery. So we know children, diabetes is coming along early, type 1, type 2. So this would be a good source to look at that, do a food sensitivity test, and make your patients aware. Next is the classic, the migraines. This was back in 2010 in an article from Cephalgia. And this was the first randomized study. It was a crossover study for migraineurs, and it showed that a diet restricted based on IgG antibodies is an effective strategy in reducing the frequency of migraine attacks. Powerful article, peer-reviewed. Please take a look at that. Next was this Crohn's disease association with IgG. First, on the top, I want to make you aware that in case you don't food sensitivity test, dairy and yeast food sensitivities appear to be the most common with Crohn's. So, hopefully you're IgG testing, but if you're not, get them off dairy. I suggest getting them off dairy and looking for yeast and foods, things like that, because they are the most common association with Crohn's disease and inflammatory bowel disease. We know environmental factors are going to play a role in this as well. The immune responses, there's autoantigens, food antigens, all of that can perpetuate inflammation. That was shown in this article from Digestion in 2010. The big thing here is the conclusion, said a nutritional intervention based on circulating IgG antibodies against food antigens showed effects with respect to stool frequency. In other words, it calmed down the having to go to the bathroom all the time. So it took some of the antigenic load off. So these are pretty good studies, and I hope you reference them as well. So with IgG testing, right, when you get the results back, what do you want to do? Well, you certainly want to eliminate those foods for at least a month, but they recommend 2 to 3 months, and I certainly go along with that. So you need to be aware that as you're tailoring the diet, low antigenic, anti-inflammatory diets can be very helpful for a lot of these folks, right? Response, be aware that sometimes when they start getting rid of some foods, there may be a slight increase due to the antigen antibody, meaning the antigen, meaning the foreign protein of the food, and the immunoglobulin complexes, because they may be floating around. You know, my joints hurt a little bit after a day or two. Don't worry about it. It'll start to calm down in case that happens. Bullet 3, if the test shows a lot of foods come back, or if yeast comes back, you got to think about, is there increased intestinal permeability, hyperpermeability? Is there something going on more with the gut that you might need to investigate? I certainly am a big proponent of doing functional stool tests to take a look at that, because they have intestinal health markers on there, markers like calprotectin, fecal secretory IgA. You can get a good handle, get a number on that as well. A beta-glucuronidase, if you're familiar with that, pancreatic digestive enzyme as well, elastase 1. So there's a lot of good information on that if you need that help. Now, the 2 bullets on the bottom, of course, they're in red because I really want them to stand out. If there is no reaction to a suspected food, in other words, if the patient comes in, I know I reacted to this food, you got to ask them, have you been avoiding that food? Gluten avoided for 2 weeks. IgG, by the way, will probably not show a reaction because you didn't eat the food, you didn't make the antibodies, and you think, well, okay, I'm okay with that. No, so you got to get diarrhea, or I suggest getting that. The last one on the bottom, if there is a reaction to a food that's not ingested, well, I don't eat that food. I've never eaten that, excuse me. There could be a cross-reactivity, right? There is some cross-reactivity in foods with other foods, with pollen, with even latex. Latex allergy, there could be people reacted to mangoes and stuff and things like that. Kiwi, you know, I've had that happen in the past, so you need to be aware of that. A good idea to get a copy of cross-reactivities with food as well, so you have that and you can refer back to that as well. They're very helpful. So IgG testing summary, good. First of all, demonstrates clinical utility, right? Hard copy data, the patient can see it, and you're like, well, this is what we got back. This is why I need to follow this diet. Sometimes when they can see it, that's going to lead to improved adherence, compliance with this test. That's why it's good to have a look at that. The elevation of the patient, have to take a look at that. Elevation of IgG may be evidence of underlying inflammation, whether there's a whole lot of symptoms or not. So you may be catching stuff a lot early where they're not real bad with their symptoms, but even if they're like, you know, I'm really not feeling so good, but I think I'm okay, not a bad idea to do this test to start to clear that up before things can get really bad. We're in the preventive health medicine business as well, as far as the integrative and functional medicine, in my opinion. That's all part of that. Now, why measure food-specific IgG? Well, it's going to be used as a dietary manager. It's going to help you fine-tune that elimination diet, because there may be some things that you know is healthy for the patient, but they react to it, so you can fine tune it. It's going to give that gut time to heal. Like I said, pressure off the immune system, the body has a chance to recover. The gut, but the rest of the body as well, the body can be in a repair mode. Now, with regard to foods to be reintroduced in 2 to 3 months, probably 3 months, it says here, not necessary to eliminate for life. I have personally found, my experience, you know, 64 years old, been doing this for a little while here, that there has been many occasions where the IgG sensitivity stayed with that person. I cannot explain this, but I know it for a fact because I've talked to my patients. The gut's fine, everything is good, but when they eat that particular certain food, it could be an herb, could be a spice, somewhere along the line, they just seem to react to it. I don't know why, but at least we have the information. You know, don't use that. I don't know why, and they're pretty happy. So when you reintroduce foods, again, it's one at a time. If they react to it, they may just stay off it for a while. And I found if they continue to react to it, just say, you know what, just eliminate that from your diet. For some reason, your body doesn't like it. So that's my take on that as well. So get to the part here. I want to talk to you about what's available at Evexia Nutraceuticals. If you're not familiar with that, the website is here, EvexiaNutraceuticals.com. And I want to show you some nutraceuticals that can actually help with gut on the next slide. But I just want to mention this on this slide, that they have an expanded catalog. There's over 50 new products that have been added. Josh can walk you through ordering stuff online. The thing is that the nutraceuticals, why I'm presenting these there, is that they are research-based. And that's really what you want to make sure that when you provide nutraceuticals from anywhere, that they're research-based, high quality, so you can get the correct, results that you want. With regard to some nutraceuticals, I mean, I can go over the whole list, but I'm just going to do like 4 that I thought were kind of very helpful. Again, evidence-based, research-based, that can help out with gut, because there is that gut digestion, everything that we had talked about tonight. The first one is GastroBalance Plus. That contains a whole bunch of good stuff. DGL licorice for one, mastic gum, vitamin U, all to help the gut lining, zinc, carnosine. That's going to help heal that gut mucosa, get a healthy environment to get the gut back, to help out with leaky gut, things of that nature, along with Gastro Plus, and that's got the herbs that are going to help heal that lining, assist with healing ulcers, reduce that inflammation. Dzymes. This is kind of a neat product that I like. Why I'm mentioning this, it's got the digestive enzymes for the proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, but it also has enzymes that are going to break down any lactose, casein, and also gluten. There are enzymes that do that. I don't know if you're familiar with that. This thing does kind of, it's kind of like the hat trick in hockey, if you're any hockey fans there, but essentially it kind of does all 3. It does your proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and then goes a little bit further and has enzymes that are going to break down lactose, because it could be some hidden, we know gluten is hidden in a lot of foods, but this can help with that if individuals are having a problem. And then liver, gallbladder, you want to make sure that you're detoxifying properly. Good bile flow and so forth can be very, very, very helpful. So I just want to mention these to you if you're not familiar with that. So Josh had mentioned in the beginning that if you're an Evexia client, of course, we have the Ask the Doctor. You'll be talking to me because I'm the person you're going to be talking to. So if you have questions on laboratory tests in particular, or don't understand the test results, that's a free service. As a client, there's an email. You just click the button and just post it, and I usually get back the same day by rule, or even within an hour or 2. So you can keep that in mind. There's also, if you're really having a hard case or really just want to talk to me, there is a phone or video conference, and there is a fee for that, so we can talk a little bit more about that. So hopefully you've enjoyed the presentation. I wasn't too fast. If you have any questions, let me know. Josh, I'm going to turn it over to see if there's any questions that I need to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Sedano. That was really excellent. I appreciate all that insightful information. So yeah, let's take a few minutes to look at some questions that came in. I know that you did address a few of these as the presentation went on, but it might be worth going back just to maybe drive some of that information home. So one question was, the test, when it works with foods that maybe haven't been ingested, but there's a result for that. Can you just review that one more time to give some insight as to why that might be?
Sure, there could be a cross-reactivity. I like to use the example of latex. Latex is from a plant, right? It's rubber, so it can come from a plant. And certain antigenic properties that someone can react to, if they have latex, but they haven't eaten banana, kiwi, what's the other one? Mango's another one. It can recognize there's some cross-reactivity that the body is creating the immunoglobulin G sensitivity, and that would be the answer to that. That's why I said it's a good idea to get a food reactivity cross-reference guide. It's always helpful when you're doing this test because it can answer a lot of questions.
Super, thank you for that. And here's another one that again we did touch on, but are the foods removed forever? Is a 3-month period sufficient? And how would you encourage that reintroduction? Would it be one at a time? Would it be a handful at a time? What, in your opinion, is the best approach?
Yeah, first you want to go at least, I say at least 3 months. It's going to be hard for a lot of folks. Again, food has an addictive, quality to it where I just want to keep that in mind. It's like a craving thing. All right, because food, if you're anxious or anxiety, say no, I want that ice cream, or I want something. You're trying to tell them like stay away from it. First of all, that's why you want to show them the hard copy data that hey, you're reacting to things making you sick. So you give them you empower them with that. As far as they start feeling better, and here's what I would do, what I did, and I didn't mention this here, is after a week I do a symptom survey. Right, initially I do a symptom survey. After a week, you can do it online, have them fill out the same one and see if they're getting better. And you could point it out to them. Say, yeah, I didn't know that. Because when folks start feeling better, a lot of times they don't know they're feeling better. But if they go back and look at the symptom survey from a week or 2 weeks ago, they're going to say, okay, hey, you know what? I guess I am. I better stay on this. It creates compliance, which is extremely helpful. As far as reintroducing foods for the question, one at a time. And you got to wait 3 days when you reintroduce that food that they reacted to, and have them write down, are they reactive? Are they getting symptoms? You know, you have the list of symptoms. That's why I showed you 3 slides on symptoms. You know, are they itching? Are they, you know, with a rash? Are they getting a headache, bloating, things like that? So yeah, you got to reintroduce one food, wait, I would say 72 hours, and they say, okay, looks like you're okay. Nothing came up. You know, bowel movements are good. Okay, let's go to the next food.
Super. And Dr. Sedana, you actually just touched on something else that I was going to inquire about. You said 3 days. That's kind of a magic number because I know that there tends to be a delayed reaction and it can be up to 3 days. So can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, those are the IgG sensitivity reactions. That's why I showed you the IgG. So hopefully I didn't say IgE sometimes. Yeah, the IgE, the immediate reactions are immediate. They're usually pretty fast, right? The IgG can be 6 hours to 24 to 48 hours to 72 hours. So where you can have this delayed reaction, because that's a lot of a problem. Like you can eat a food today, right? And imagine 2 days later, man, my stomach hurts or I got a headache. And you'd never make the tie-in unless you know about this, right? So that's why, because it is the delayed, a slower type of reaction with the immunoglobulin G, right? Hypersensitivity 2 and 3, as I showed you on that slide. That's why you want to wait. I personally want to wait. I've been doing this a long time. That reintroduce that food, give it 3 days, make sure that they're all clear and say, okay, you know what? You can have that food. But I do suggest that if you give them the clearance on the food, ask them, please don't eat this every day. I have a couple days a week and then, rotate your diet. Just keep them healthy.
Excellent. Let's see. So another question is, how does this particular test compare to maybe some others that are available on the market? Just as an example, like the FIT test.
Well, the FIT, if you're looking at the FIT test, the FIT looks at the immunoglobulins as well. The FIT also looks at complement, which is those proteins coming from the liver. So it has another component to it. So if they see a complement, what's known as a complement reaction to it, and complement can bind to the immunoglobulin with the foreign protein, so they count that up. So they add that into and say, okay, are we getting this other reaction to it as well? So that'd be the comparison to the two.
Okay. And is there anything else that you would say that kind of differentiates this from some of the other food sensitivity options on the market right now?
No, I mean, there a lot of the sensitivity is a sensitivity. They're all going to look at going after, and I like the sheer fact that this one is going after the IgG1 through IgG4. It's going through the 4 subclasses of the immunoglobulin G protein. So that's something that you want to look for. I know that there's other tests that we're doing, the IgM and IgA, but there's so much good information just with the IgG, that I think you're going to be, very happy. I've used IgG straight alone testing, doing the 4 subclasses, for a while, and a really good success. The thing that, like I said, that I had brought up that I definitely want to stress is those food intolerances. Don't forget those, and that's why these slides can be helpful. The histamine could be a fly in the ointment when things don't turn out right, or the lactose. Oh, I forgot that one. Really, this way you have that in your arsenal. Help you be really up your game as a clinician.
Super. And now you had mentioned a score. Is there additional information other than just kind of what's on that report in the red, yellow, green categorization?
Yeah, when I talked to the lab, they do the ELISA testing, and I was told it was proprietary. In other words, mind my own business. Okay, and that's the research that they have done, because that's what they use based on Dr. YorkTest. Dr. Hart's been doing this research for quite a long time, and that's what they have really surveyed out. with looking at that immunoglobulin, with the ELISA test, and they have figured out through their data, which is proprietary data. So, in which I understand that those reactions going from number 20 reactivity value to 200, those are the ones those are the ones that are causing problem based on their years of research. Dr. Hart's been doing this for a long time, so kudos to her.
Super. And we've got a couple questions that I'll go ahead and just answer. So what's the cost? The cost of the York test is $139. And how many analytes are being tested? So there's 200 food and drink components that are tested in this particular analysis. Let's see. And now, Dr. Sedan, you had talked about ELISA and that methodology of testing. Now, is that the same methodology that's typically used for Lyme testing? We've got someone that's asking about that.
Yeah, serological testing. Yeah, they do that. Western blot, they look at the serum, immunoglobulins, things of that nature. Yes.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Now, again, if we didn't get to everyone's questions, because we're starting to get close on time here, we will follow up with you individually via email. And of course, we will make sure that this slide deck and the recording of the presentation will be available. Let's see. So before we wrap up, I think that it's important now that we've learned about this test and the benefits and value, I wanted to just briefly review how to order it through our test menu. So first, you would log into your Evexia account and click on the test menu link. Next, you would use the test menu to locate the YorkTest icon that can be found either from the drop-down or the laboratory partners section. You would click that, review the test, and then click Order Test Kit. That's the button in the top right-hand corner on that page there. Finally, you would confirm your account information and the desired quantity, then click the Place Order button to complete the process. Now, also be aware that we can drop ship a kit directly to your patients. And to do this, you would simply replace your clinic name and address with the patient's details. And just please note that shipping charges will apply. Now, of course, we are happy to assist you with any issues or questions that you may have. Now, we can be reached during our business hours between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern Time at 888-852-2723. That's Monday through Friday. You can also contact us anytime via email at info@evexiadiagnostics.com. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for this webinar event. Until next time, from everyone at Evexia Diagnostics, stay healthy, stay safe, and we wish you all the best on your pathway to wellness. Take care, everyone.